And I would like to start with you, Cecilia. Thought it was really interesting what you were talking about, being 100% circular. That's not a small goal at all. Speaking about a huge global company like H&M. But when you were talking about 100% circular, were you talking about the clothing production or the company as a whole?
As I said, like we don't know how to become 100% circular, and we don't know when we will become 100% circular, but it will mean a circular approach to how our products are made and used, and that will include everything from design, production, raw material sourcing, and different types of ways to make sure that the resources and the products, for that sake, is being used for as long as possible. So it will mean H&M as such, I would say, and how we work with production.
I'm thinking that there are quite a few clothing producers in Sweden that also are aiming at. A lot of people are talking right now about circular business models, and you were also talking about cooperation. Are there any things like that in sight, cooperating with other initiatives in Sweden? Or are they just competitors?
No, I think in the sustainability world we're not competitors, actually, because we really need to tackle these questions together. We cannot do it alone. So I would say it's a number of both global and international collaborations and Swedish ones as well. And Mr. Future Fashion is one example on how brands and academia come together to tackle the issues of circularity.
Because I saw that you're cooperating with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, that is very much about the business model as a whole. So you're looking at these things as well?
We're one of their partners, and I would say that they are looking into circularity from a holistic perspective, which we also need to do. And it's very much business model related, and it's very like science related to why and also the business case behind turning towards a circular economy. Because I think, and as I said, like in order to be successful in the future, we believe that the way to go is actually to turn circular instead of this linear old-fashioned model, because that will not be a way forward, and that will not be a profitable way either.
But that is also, you're mentioning profitable, because that's also a part of this dilemma, so to speak, because as you said, Pramod, before, sustainability is expensive today, so unless you see any kind of tax relief from that department, it will be, so this will probably be reflected on the price.
I think
how do you look at that?
For us, it's more expensive today, but this is an investment we need to do in order to survive in the future. And but we could also see that we could help the big players that like IKEA and H&M could actually, by our demand, actually make, like, because we see, for example, buying recycled polyester for a long time, we can see that the price also comes down, depending on the availability and the increased demand and the increased supply of recycled polyester. So I think it's a matter of this turning point.
But just to add on to this, I think what Cecilia was saying, the most important part here is to create a collaboration with the biggest stake, so that you create a push and pull in the industry. Because as long as it remains a niche or a desired position for one brand, one company, it is going to be expensive. The point is that you create enough volume in the market and enough demand down the supply chain, because the supply chain of textile is so fragmented, but you have to connect with each of them. And then you actually create a tipping point. And one of the examples is of collaboration and creating price neutral to a larger extent is Better Cotton. Because there many brands have collaborated, and there is enough demand and supply in the market, and whereby it is almost, I can say it's a price neutral. And going forward, it will be like affordable to the people. Because we can create volume, but if it is not affordable to the consumer out there, what choice do you have left to the consumer? He will always go for the so-called non-sustainable textiles buying, because that's cheaper, you know. So we have to think of the both ends to change the market as such. And that is where it is super important that sustainable textile becomes affordable to the mid segment of the populace, which is the big consumer.
And we do not charge a higher price for our sustainable clothes than our normal clothes. Yeah. So we still have the same business idea in providing fashion and quality.
I know, but you probably don't get the same profit, right?
For some materials, I would say we see it as it will be a period when we do not, but in long term, it will be the most profitable way.
And it would be the same dilemma on IKEA, right?
Yeah, I think on that respect, we are very, very clear on that front, that it's about, whenever we talk sustainability, and the usual behavior is we talk either as a brand position, and then all of a sudden we go down to the bottom of the value chain, which is the farmers. But then when you are working on a sustainable textile, you need to create business case, as Cecilia was saying, for each value chain actor. And if you create that value chain actor, then it will no more be expensive as a sustainable textile. It works out for everybody of them. You know?
Yeah, yes.
Well, I think that this is not actually a problem of profit or finance. It's a problem of surviving. We have, and you look on all the data we have around us, the resources are still, they aren't there. Those who are not facing this and don't find a solution to it, they don't survive. So if we don't find a solution, we won't survive. And I think that, of course, recycling is one way of reducing the problem, but even recycling requires resources to be added to it. So we need to review all this chain in order to reduce the amount of additional resources that we add to this. And this is a challenge we haven't solved, but we need to solve it.
Yeah, I mean, if you follow this subject for quite some time, you will discover that there is so much positive progress going on in the industry. At the same time, this is the textile industry, which has a history of problems when it comes to environmental sustainability and social sustainability. But as we have seen here today, there are technical inventions being made, and there are large corporations with artisans and farmers. And we talk about the next generation of textiles. But as Pramod said, where do we go from here? What I'm wondering from my perspective is, what are the main challenges according from your different perspectives? I'm posing this question to anybody here, really.
Yeah, I think, we also tried at one point to go one step beyond our spinners and work with farmers in our region to grow organic cotton. But the scale was too small, it was too expensive, it didn't work out. And so that buy-in wasn't there even at, certainly not at the farmer end. And I think that's where collaboration is really important. If everyone along the chain can collaborate, that seems to be the only answer. Like, for instance, as I said, I really didn't think about sustainable textiles 5 years ago because we were working, in a small scale and making garments and home furnishing. And then when we went large and started working with IKEA, then this came into our awareness, and then we took steps to deal with it, and in a collaborative manner. And I think this is possible, across the chain.
What kind of collaborations would that be?
For example, the raw material that we use in the production of IKEA home furnishing is sourced sustainably from certain places which adhere to the sustainability norms. So that has helped us, because otherwise we wouldn't know where to source it from. And of course the next step is, I was just talking to Pramod earlier, that where is the place from where we can get yarn which is made by Better Cotton Initiative, so we can use it for our weavers to make the fabric. So across the chain there needs to be collaboration, knowledge sharing.
They want to come there. You asked, where do we go from here? And I think I was trying to think around the cotton, that what happens. And Lars' input is super important in the sense that the resources are limited. But we know few things are going to happen, and we can't deny that. Climate change will happen. Population will increase, resources will become scarce. And one good thing which will happen is information technology will improve. What we don't know is the two factor, and I always try to interplay one of them. Whether the world will be more interconnected or will it be more fragmented? And the reason why I'm posing this question is because think it like this, when the resources are scarce, will the nations try to protect the resources which they have? Or they will allow like, okay, you don't need to grow cotton, you can grow only corn because this is suited to you, cotton somebody else grows. It can go either direction, you know. Or whether the world becomes slow or fast-paced in terms of fashion consumption, you know. Now, if you try to interplay, the few things comes quite dramatically into this. And it's a thought process which we all need to think from sustainable point of view. If the climate change happens, and which will happen, who is the most vulnerable in this whole value chain? It's the lowest people, or it's the first person in the value chain, they are the most vulnerable, with 2 acres of land or 5 acres of land. If you think in terms of what happens to the mid-segment of the pyramid, where do they get consumption? And I always try to think, when Tarun was talking, that in my parents' or grandparents' time, we used to see silk, natural silk was quite available in the marriage and function people used to wear. But that is replaced by artificial silk or polyester. Would that happen to cotton? That the virgin is only available to those who can afford. Maybe the recycled is the solution, or the new generation man-made fiber is the solution for the mid-mass of the consumers. And hence, we need to start preparing for that direction of thinking. Because the land is same. The farmers, there is a need for feeding the people. And hence, there will be less and more pressure on fiber growing. So it has to, people have to cover their body, and they have to, you know, have the bed linen and the home furnishing. So it has to come from somewhere, and which is not using the fresh resources, fresh land, and fresh means fossil fuel. But it has to go into the closed loop, what Cecilia was saying. And that will be the affordable to the people, because virgin will be only that much less that it is only for the upper part of the pyramid who can afford. That's what one of the thinking which we need to think and develop around it. You know?
Yeah, I can only agree. I think I used my presentation to talk around the challenges I see, and also how we believe that we need to tackle these challenges in a way from a material perspective by maximizing the use of recycled resources, as you say, and also the virgin resources that we use to make sure that they are sustainably sourced. And sustainably sourced will take both environmental and social parameters into account for us.
Well, there's also the fashion perspective, as you both come from the fashion side of the business, and the system that the consumer has become used to, I mean, since the beginning of fashion, really, to you know, replace your, in the extreme sense, you would replace your wardrobe each season, which doesn't go along at all with sustainability.
No, it doesn't.
How do you look at the question of seasons, who come from the fashion side of things? How do you look at that in the future?
I've been talking so much already on this panel.
You talk more sense, come on, dog.
I think there are some seasonal aspects for the parts of the world where we actually have winter and summer. We need to change the wardrobe due to weather. We use winter jackets in the winter, but I think from our perspective, we want to provide fashion that has a long lifespan independently, and not create something that you use or wear once. We want to create fashion that you appreciate and that you wear, and that you can express yourself in. And how this is made it's entirely up to the customer in a way as well. I think, of course, we believe that you in the future still want. There will be a need for clothes. There will be a need for fashion and expressing yourself through fashion. But how this is done could be in a totally different way.
It's also, I think, where the media plays a big role, or opinion leaders, to change, the perception of people of how they define themselves. Like she said, there are many different people at different parts of the evolutionary cycle. There are people who've had it all, who don't give a damn, who buy superb quality, wear, really dress for themselves. I mean, that's the ultimate freedom in fashion, where you buy what you love, you wear it for the quality of the way it feels on your skin. But in emerging economies like India, with people who have money for the first time, it's quite the reverse, because they're defining themselves by what they have. And so there's a lot of excessive consumption and a lot of projection in fashion as well, which you don't see more of in the wedding business, because it's so over the top that it's now become hideous and ugly, because it has lost all reason, and it's just a projection. If someone wears 5 diamond necklaces, it doesn't make them look better than one. Or, there are 10 functions, and there's just a lot of excess. But, these are all processes that societies have to go through. I mean, I'd say here that in Sweden, you're about as evolved as a society as exists on this planet, all of Scandinavia. And a lot of other economies are way down that value chain, because they've gone up and down in their own, cyclical history. So, but, I mean, I wouldn't say that in India at all yet there's any kind of great consciousness. There isn't for water, there isn't for pollution, as is at frightening levels. And society normally tends to have responsibility across boards as a whole. It's never isolated for one thing and not the other, But it'll get there, and as you'll have discussed, there's a lot of pressure because time's running out. I think it's commendable that these giant corporations are using their resources and to look ahead, because they know that they'll be the most impacted in a way. But it's also that they are using their collective wisdom to find alternatives. But definitely the fashion media, I go back to them because actually the more I analyze and see their role, at least in India where I've seen it come from nothing, I'm finding it super irresponsible, because they're still promoting old ideas, they're promoting, a whole kind of clutch of ideas that are just bonkers to me, as an Indian who's been educated and has lived there for a long time. Because I feel it's putting people in a state of disequilibrium rather than making them feel comfortable with who they are in the current context. So I think they have a very important role to play.
And you, as a fashion designer, I mean, you are an opinion maker as well as a fashion designer. Are you interested in implementing sustainable textiles in your...
a lot of our work is hand done. So we just started with that, not because it was fashionable, because that's what we were reviving. However, now because of technology, I have dilemmas. We got to digital printing as opposed to, say, hand block printing or screen printing, which is done this thing. There's much less waste, it's much more efficient, but it wipes out a whole tradition. And also the best digital printing is transfer printing, which happens on polyester. And that we've been loath to use. But also, like I said briefly, I touched upon it, that in today's lifestyle, some synthetic blends, some things are necessary. Because if you're going to leave home at 7 and come back at 8 at night, it's difficult to do it in pure cotton that's unlined, because you look like a mess halfway through the day. And there are other corporate requirements and stuff. So everything has its challenges and dilemmas that you have to keep thinking about, So we'll use a few things if they're perforated and your skin can breathe. But, we're very small and it's kind of high end. It's not, it doesn't kind of change anyone's paradigm. But we've always been about sustainability and how we work, and because a lot of the stuff is hand done. I mean, it's just that's the basis of why we exist.
And I know, Lars, you talked about sustainable textiles derived from wood.
Yeah.
Yes. Drifting off somewhere. Maybe many thoughts at a time. Could you tell us more about this? Are these textiles very far from the market? I mean, we have seen bamboo fabrics and stuff like that. Is this very far from the market?
No. I mean, this is something which they've been talking about, like viscose fibers or lyocell technology. It's definitely on the market, and there's also a lot of research going on making them more cotton-like. And I think that's definitely going to happen. The technology of making viscose fibers was invented in late 1800s, and I don't think much development has happened between 30s and to 2005, when you had this lack of cotton, and now we see that this is something that is really required. And forests all around the world it's a growing asset, and I think this is something that could be utilized in another way. We should utilize it to make the kind of products that we need, like housing. We can actually also make food products, or products for making food stuff from wood, and also textiles. And in a circular economy, this is what we should add to it, I think.
And do you have your own research lab at?
Well, we have. In the Editabila group, we have a big research organization in Mumbai, but we also have a research organization, our own development department, but we also have a lot of different organizations in Sweden, and this is something where we need more collaboration, both with the downstream actors in the textile community. What kind of fibers do we make? How should we make it? How should we make it more sustainable? How should we avoid excessive transportations? Can we jump a couple of steps? Find synergies? That's a way of utilizing resources in the best way. But in order to do that, we need to have a closer dialogue in order to understand the different conditions that we have. I think that we do not fully understand the conditions you have in the fashion industry as little as you would probably understand what we are facing from the forest side. So a larger cooperation and try to find where do we, by joining forces, add value to the value chain. And also how do we, in the end, it's also a question of how do we share the value that we're adding. But if we don't have a dialogue, we don't know what to share.